He told himself it was the right decision. This was what kings did with decisions that tore something inside them. They pressed the torn edges together and called the pressing reason. And the reason was always the same: safety. Protection. The specific calculus of a man whose responsibility for other people's lives included the authority to determine where those lives were positioned on the map, and the further authority to move them when the map became dangerous. Finn Lindmark, Alpha King of the Skarholt territory, had moved the pieces on his map 3 times in 6 years of ruling. The first time had been a village evacuation during the border conflict. The second had been a supply repositioning during the winter famine. Both had been governance, impersonal, strategic, the kind of moving that affected populations rather than individuals. The third time was Kamala. He had sent her away on a morning in early winter, 6 hours before the intelligence report confirmed what he had suspected for 3 weeks, that the Voss coalition's campaign against Skarholt was not a border dispute, but an assassination operation, and that the targets were not military but personal, and that the specific personal target was the woman who had been living in the royal wing for 10 months, and who had become, through no strategic intention, and against every professional boundary he maintained, the fixed point around which his days had reorganized themselves. He had sent her to the northern settlement, 90 miles from the stronghold, with an escort of 4 wolves and a letter that he had written 3 times and that said, in its final version, "You must go. I cannot explain. Trust that I would not send you away if staying were safe." He had not said, "I love you." He had not said, "I am doing this because the alternative is watching you die." He had not said any of the things that would have made the sending honest instead of merely strategic, because honest would have been the thing that made her stay, and staying was the thing that would have killed her. He told himself it was the right decision. His daughter told him otherwise. Chapter 1. Camila Okafor had arrived at Skarholt 11 months ago as a territorial record keeper. The position was administrative, one of 43 positions in the stronghold's governance structure. The specific kind of role that required precision and institutional memory, and the willingness to spend long hours with documents that most people found tedious, and that Camilla found, in the particular way of her mind, fascinating. Records were stories told in numbers and dates and the specific language of transactions between people who were no longer alive, and she read them the way some people read novels. For the narrative, for the human decisions that the numbers encoded, for the specific moments where a column of figures told you something about the person who had entered them that no biography ever would. She was 30. She had come from the Okafor family in the Eastern District, a pack-affiliated family of modest standing whose contributions to Skarholt's governance had been clerical for 3 generations. She was not remarkable by the court's metrics, not beautiful in the formal sense, not politically connected, not carrying the specific pedigree that the court valued in people who occupied proximity to the crown. She was remarkable by Finn's metrics, which were different, which he had not known were different until she demonstrated the difference. The demonstration happened in her 2nd week, during a routine records audit that Finn attended because the audit concerned a discrepancy in the territorial tax accounts that the council had been unable to resolve for 6 months. He sat in the audit room, expecting the usual, the careful, diplomatic circling that institutional record keepers performed when the discrepancy was political rather than mathematical, the specific dance of people who knew where the problem was, but were unwilling to point at it because pointing required courage the position did not usually demand. Camila pointed. She laid the relevant documents on the table in the specific order that made the discrepancy visible, not buried in the analysis, not softened by context, but structurally exposed, the way a good engineer exposed a flaw by removing the pieces that concealed it. She pointed at the entry that was wrong, named the person who had entered it, explained the downstream effect, and recommended the correction. She did this in 9 minutes. The council had spent 6 months. Finn had looked at her, really looked, for the first time the way he looked at things that changed his understanding of the landscape they were in, and he had seen a woman who did not soften her accuracy for the comfort of the room, who pointed at the thing that was wrong with the specific direct confidence of someone who trusted the numbers more than the politics, and who was not going to pretend the numbers said something other than what they said. He had been in significant trouble from approximately that moment. The months that followed had been the specific slow revelation of a man discovering that the person he had hired for a clerical position was, in fact, the person he had been structured to need without knowing it. She worked. She worked with the focused precision he recognized because he operated on the same frequency, the specific quality of someone who did not accept approximately right when exactly right was available. She found 3 more discrepancies in 3 months. She reorganized the records archive with a system that was so logical the previous archivist had described it, with grudging admiration, as what the records had been trying to be for 20 years. She was also, in the evenings, in the specific hours between the formal day and the formal night, the person he found himself talking to. Not about governance, about the things that governance ran on and that governance could not produce. The specific quality of attention that a man whose days were organized around decisions needed in order to remain a person rather than a function. She listened the way she read records, for the narrative, for the human decisions, for the moments where what he said told her something about who he was that the words alone did not communicate. He had not intended to love her. He had intended to employ her. The distance between those two things had been closed not by a decision, but by an accumulation of evenings, of conversations, of the specific evidence that she was the person who saw him most clearly and who treated the seeing as something worth doing carefully. His daughter Sana had seen it before he had. Sana was 5 and possessed the specific perceptive clarity of children who had not yet learned to ignore the things that were obvious, and what was obvious to Sana was that her father went to the records office every evening and came back different. Softer, she said, which was a word she had learned from the cook and which she applied with the indiscriminate confidence of a 5-year-old who had found a new tool. "You're softer when you come back from Camila," Sana had said. "I am the same," Finn had said. "You're softer," Sana had insisted. "Your face is." She had been right. She was usually right about faces. Chapter 2. The intelligence came from the border network on a Monday. Finn's spymaster, a woman named Rivka Goss, who had been running Skarholt's intelligence operations for 8 years with the specific cold efficiency of someone who found information more useful than emotion, delivered the report in the private study at 6 in the morning. "The Voss coalition has contracted an elimination team," Rivka said. "The target profile is not military, it is personal. The specific target is..." She paused. Rivka did not pause for dramatic effect. She paused because the information she was delivering required precision. "The specific target is any person of significance to your majesty whose removal would create the maximum psychological disruption." Finn looked at the window. "The intelligence suggests they have identified the record keeper," Rivka said. "Camila Okafor. The coalition's surveillance network has documented the evening visits. They have assessed the relationship as..." Another pause. "Significant." The study was very quiet. "How reliable is this?" Finn said. "Reliable enough that I am in your study at 6 in the morning, Rivka said. He looked at the report. At the specific language of threat assessment, the clinical terminology that intelligence operations use to describe the potential death of someone you loved. As if the clinical terminology made it manageable. It did not make it manageable. It made it information, and information was what he worked with, and the information said, "She will die if she stays." "Options," he said. "Increase her security detail," Rivka said. "Relocate her within the stronghold to a more defensible position." Or, she set down the report, "remove her from the target zone entirely. The northern settlement is outside the coalition's operational range. Their assets do not extend past the Skarholt interior. The northern settlement is 90 miles away." 90 miles from the stronghold," Rivka said. 90 miles from the target zone, 90 miles from you." She looked at him with the specific directness that 8 years of working together had earned. "I am telling you the options. I am not telling you which one to choose." He chose the one that destroyed him. Chapter 3. He did not tell her why. This was the decision within the decision, the specific compounding cruelty of a choice that was already cruel. He could not tell her because telling her would give her the information she needed to argue, and she would argue, because she was a woman who pointed at the thing that was wrong and did not soften it, and the thing that was wrong was sending her away, and she would fight it with the specific direct confidence that he loved, and that would, in this instance, get her killed. If she knew the threat was real, she would insist on staying. If she knew the threat was real, she would argue that the risk was hers to accept. If she knew the threat was real, she would point at the decision the way she pointed at discrepancies in the records, and she would say this is wrong, and she would be right, and he would not be able to withstand her being right because he had never been able to withstand it. So he did not tell her. He wrote the letter, 3 versions. The first was honest, and he burned it. The second was strategic, and he burned it. The third was the one he sent, the one that said trust me without earning the trust, that said go without giving the reason. That was the specific cowardice of a man who knew the right thing to do and chose the expedient thing because the right thing required a conversation he could not have without his resolve breaking. She left on a morning in early winter. He watched from the study window, the carriage, the escort of 4, the road north. He watched until the carriage was gone, and then he stood at the window for a long time after, in the specific stillness of a man who had just sent away the person who made his face softer and who was now left with the face that remained. Santa noticed within hours. "Where is Camilla?" she said at breakfast. "She's gone to the north for a while," he said. "Why?" "For work." Santa looked at him with the specific assessment of a 5-year-old who had inherited her father's capacity for reading what was underneath what was being said. "You're not softer," she said. "You're hard again." "Santa, you sent her away," Santa said. Not a question. A reading, as accurate as anything Camilla had ever produced from a column of figures. "She needed to go," he said. "She didn't want to go," Santa said. "Her face was wrong when she left. I saw it from the window." He looked at his daughter. 5 years old. The face reader, the perceiver, the small person who saw everything the adults tried to arrange away from her sight, and who reported what she saw with the unfiltered accuracy of someone who did not yet know that accuracy was supposed to be managed. "She will come back," he said. Santa looked at him. He saw, in her eyes, the specific calculation of a child deciding whether to believe what she was being told, and he saw the specific moment when the calculation resolved against him. She said nothing. She ate her breakfast. She went to the nursery with Helga, the nursemaid, and she did not mention Camilla again for 3 days. On the 4th day, the storm came. Chapter 4. The storm arrived from the northeast, which was the direction storms arrived from in the Scarholt territory when they intended to be serious. It came with the specific atmospheric pressure that every wolf in the territory recognized, the compression that preceded real weather, the kind that closed roads and buried landmarks and turned the landscape into something that did not cooperate with plans. Finn was in the council chamber when the weather report came. The northern road, the road to the settlement, the road the carriage had taken, would be impassable within 6 hours. The storm's projected duration was 2 to 3 days. The settlement was secure, provisioned, defensible. Camilla would be safe there, enclosed by the storm, unreachable by the coalition's operatives and by everything else including. He noted with the specific compound pain of a man counting costs. He returned to the private quarters at midday to check on Santa, who was with Helga in the nursery, engaged in the specific indoor activities that storm days required: drawing, the building of elaborate structures from wooden blocks, the particular creative intensity that 5-year-olds brought to the task of entertaining themselves when the outside world was unavailable. Helga met him at the nursery door. "She's been quiet today," Helga said. "More than usual." "Quiet how?" "Planning quiet," Helga said. She said this with the specific tone of a woman who had been managing Santa for 3 years and who had learned to distinguish between the child's many varieties of quiet. "She's been looking at the window." "She's 5, he said. 5-year-olds look at windows." "She's been looking at the window that faces north," Helga said. He went into the nursery. Santa was at the window, the north-facing window, as Helga had said, the one that looked out over the stronghold's north yard and beyond it the road that led, eventually, to the settlement where Kamala was. "Santa," he said. She turned from the window. She looked at him with the specific composed quality that children produced when they had decided something and were managing the adult's awareness of the decision. "The storm is getting bigger," she said. "Yes, Camilla is in the north. Camilla is safe in the settlement." "She's alone," Santa said. "She's not alone. She has the escort." "She's alone from us," Santa said. The correction was precise. The correction was the specific kind of precision that came from a child who understood exactly what she meant and who was not interested in the adult's broader definition. "She will be fine," he said. "The settlement is safe." Santa looked at the window. She looked at the storm. She looked at him. "I want to go to bed early," she said. This was unusual. Santa did not go to bed early. Santa went to bed at her scheduled time after her scheduled negotiations about the scheduled time, with the specific regularity of a child whose routine was a fixed part of her operating system. "All right," he said. She went to bed. She was compliant and quiet and cooperative in a way that should have told him something, and that he was too occupied with the storm and the intelligence and the specific weight of what he had done to Camilla to properly read. Helga put her to bed at 7. The nursery was quiet by 7:30. At 9 o'clock, Helga checked the room. The bed was empty. Chapter 5. The search began immediately. Finn received the news the way he received all catastrophic information, with the specific stillness that preceded action, the momentary complete stop that his body required before it could reorganize itself for the emergency. The stop lasted 2 seconds. Then, he was moving. The stronghold was searched. Every room, every corridor, every closet and storage space, and the specific hiding places that a 5-year-old who had grown up in the building would know about. The guards searched. The household staff searched. Finn searched, room by room, calling her name with the controlled voice of a man who was managing fear, and the management was visible. They did not find her. They found, at 10 o'clock, that the north gate was unlocked. The gate required a key. The key was kept at the guard station. The guard on North Gate duty reported that the key had been in its position at his last check, 8:30, and was not in its position now. The gate was unlocked, and the gate was open, and beyond the gate was the north yard, and beyond the north yard was the road to the settlement, and beyond that was a winter storm that was, by 10 o'clock, producing conditions that a grown wolf in full shift would find challenging, and that a 5-year-old would find lethal. Finn looked at the open gate. He looked at the storm. She planned this, Helga said. She was standing beside him at the gate with the specific devastation of a woman who had been outmaneuvered by a 5-year-old, and who understood, in the specific horrible clarity of hindsight, every sign she had missed. The early bedtime. The compliance. She was waiting. She went to find Camilla, Finn said. She went north, Helga said. Into that. He was already moving, not walking, running, toward the stables, toward the specific horse that he used for the northern patrols, and that was strong enough and fast enough and trained enough for what the road was going to demand. He was running and he was thinking, and the thinking was not the careful governance thinking that had produced the decision to send Camilla away. It was the other thinking. The father thinking. The specific raw processing of a man whose daughter was in a storm because he had sent away the person she loved, and she had decided, with the 5-year-old logic that did not filter for feasibility, to go get her back. Rivka intercepted him at the stable door. The coalition operatives, she said. The storm will have grounded them. Their operational window. I do not care about the operational window, he said. My daughter is in that storm. I know, Rivka said. I am telling you, the operatives are grounded. The road is dangerous for the weather. It is not dangerous for the coalition. Not tonight. He processed this, the specific relevant fact, that the thing he had been protecting against was not active. That the storm that was trying to kill his daughter had also neutralized the threat he had sent Camilla away to escape. He took the horse. Chapter 6. The storm was everything the atmospheric reports had promised, and several things they had not. He rode north. The road was generous. The road was a suggestion that the landscape made to travelers in good weather, and that the storm had overruled. Visibility was measured in feet. The wind came from directions that should not have been possible given the storm's documented trajectory, which told him the storm was doing what northeast storms in Skarholt sometimes did, reorganizing itself mid-event, becoming something more complex than the models predicted. He rode because stopping was not available to him. He rode because his daughter was somewhere ahead of him in this, a 5-year-old in the dark and the cold and the wind. And the specific father calculation that was running in his head was a countdown whose end he could not think about. He found her at mile 3. Not on the road. Beside it, in the lee of a rock formation that the road curved around, the specific natural shelter that anyone who knew the northern route would have recognized as the first viable windbreak between the stronghold and the settlement. She was there because she was Finn's daughter, and Finn's daughter had inherited his capacity for reading terrain, and she had found the shelter the way he would have found it. By instinct. By the wolf's knowledge of the land that she had absorbed in 5 years of living on it. She was in her wolf form. Small, 5-year-old small, the cub's body barely larger than a mid-sized dog, silver-furred, curled tight against the rock with her tail over her nose and her body conserving everything it had. She was alive. She was conscious. She was shivering with the deep systemic shiver that meant her body was working hard to stay warm and was approaching the limits of the work. He dismounted. He shifted, the transformation taking him from man to wolf in the specific seconds that the urgency compressed it into. His wolf form was large enough to serve as the windbreak his daughter needed, and he curled around her the way he had curled around her when she was an infant and had shifted for the first time in her crib, the full-body enclosure of a father's wolf protecting its cub. Sanna pressed against him. Her shivering slowed. Her breathing steadied. He held her in the storm and he thought about the decision. The letter. The sending. The specific chain of consequences that began with "I cannot tell her why" and ended with his 5-year-old daughter alone in a winter storm because she had decided that the sending was wrong, and had done the thing that 5-year-olds did when the world was wrong. She had tried to fix it. Herself. She had been right. The way she was always right about faces. The way she had been right about softer, and right about alone from us, and right about every observation she had made since the moment Camilla had been sent away. He had been protecting the wrong thing. He had been protecting Camilla from the coalition. He should have been protecting the thing that Camilla's presence maintained, the specific quality of a household that had a center, that had the fixed point that Santa oriented toward, that had the warmth that his face carried home from the records office every evening. He had removed the center, and the household had responded the way any system responded when the center was removed. It had destabilized, and the smallest, most vulnerable member of the system had been the first to act on the destabilization, because children did not manage instability the way adults did. Children fixed it. He held his daughter in the storm and waited for dawn. Chapter 7. Dawn came. The storm's first phase had passed. The window between the initial front and the secondary system that the atmospheric reports predicted would arrive by midday. The window was narrow. It was enough. He shifted back. He wrapped Santa, who had shifted back as well, small and cold and exhausted but alive and whole, in the cloak he had brought, and put her on the horse and rode, not south, north. He rode north because the settlement was closer than the stronghold, and because his daughter needed warmth and medical attention, and because this was the part the father calculation had resolved during the night, during the hours of holding her in the storm and thinking about what he had done wrong, because Kamala was at the settlement, and Kamala was who Santa had been going to find, and he was done sending people in the wrong direction. They reached the settlement at mid-morning. The settlement was small, 40 wolves, a cluster of buildings around a central hall, the specific architecture of a place that existed because someone had to live at the edge of the territory, and these people had volunteered. The escort he had sent with Camilla was at the gate. They saw the king arriving on horseback with a child in his arms, and they moved with the specific urgency of men who understood that something had gone wrong, and that the going wrong required their best professional response. The healer, Finn said. And Camilla. Camilla came. She came from the central hall, where she had been, he learned later, pacing since dawn because she had felt the storm and had known, with the specific intuition that she would never be able to explain in logical terms, that something was wrong at the stronghold. She came through the settlement gate, and she saw Finn, and she saw the bundle in his arms, and her face did the thing that faces did when the thing they feared most and the thing they loved most were present in the same moment. Santa, she said. He handed his daughter to her. Santa, who had been quiet since dawn, who had held herself in the specific stoic composure of a child who knew she had done something enormous and was managing the aftermath. Santa reached for Kamala, and the reaching broke the composure, and what came out was the sound of a 5-year-old who had walked into a storm to find someone and had been found first by her father, but had not, until this moment, found the person she had been looking for. Camilla held her. The way she held things, completely, with the specific attention that told the thing being held that it was the most important thing in her hands. I came to get you, Santa said, into Camilla's neck. He sent you away and it was wrong, and I came to get you. Camilla looked at Finn over the child's head. He stood in the settlement yard in the narrow window between storms with his daughter in someone else's arms and the specific expression of a man whose decision had been dismantled by a 5-year-old and who understood that the dismantling was the most important thing that had happened to his governance in 6 years. She went into the storm, he said. Alone, she unlocked the north gate, and she went into the storm to find you. Camilla's arms tightened around the child. Because I sent you away, he said, because I made a decision to protect you without telling you why, and the decision removed you from us, and his voice was doing something he did not allow his voice to do in front of other people. She fixed it. The way she fixes everything. By going directly to the thing that is wrong. What was the threat? Camilla said. She said it with the specific direct precision that he loved. The precision that did not soften, that pointed at the thing. He told her. The coalition. The assassination operation. The personal targeting. The specific intelligence that named her as the point of maximum psychological disruption. He told her in the settlement yard with the storm building again in the north. and his daughter between them and the 4 escort wolves maintaining a perimeter that was professional and also, he suspected, emotional. She listened. She processed. He could see the specific machinery of her mind working. The same machinery that found discrepancies in records and reorganized archives, and pointed at the thing that was wrong with the direct confidence that had made him fall in love with her in the first place. "You should have told me," she said. "You would have stayed." "Yes," she said. "I would have stayed. Because the risk was mine to assess, and the decision was mine to make, and you took both from me because you believed your assessment of my safety was more important than my autonomy over my own life." She held his gaze over Sana's head. "That was wrong." "I know," he said. "Your daughter knew before you did. My daughter knows most things before I do," he said. "It is a recurring pattern." Sana, against Camilla's chest, made a sound that was either agreement or exhaustion. Camilla shifted her weight to hold the child more securely and looked at the sky, where the secondary front was building with the specific visual language of weather that intended to arrive soon and stay long. "We cannot travel in this," she said. "No. The settlement is secure." "Yes." "Then we stay," she said. "Together. Until the storm passes and the road opens and we return to the stronghold together." She looked at him, "And when we return, you tell me the things you should have told me, and we make the decisions together, and you do not send me away again." "I will not send you away again," he said. "And the coalition." "Rivka says the storm grounded their operatives," he said. "Their operational window has closed. The intelligence suggests they are reassessing the campaign entirely. The cost has exceeded their projection. So the threat is diminished." "The threat is diminished," he said. "It was diminished before I sent you away. I made the decision based on incomplete analysis because the analysis was compromised by—" He stopped. "By loving me," she said. "By loving you too much to think clearly about the risk to you," he said. "Which is not a defense, it is a diagnosis." She looked at him for a long time. The settlement yard, the approaching storm, the child between them. The specific geography of 3 people who had been separated by a king's decision and who had been reunited by a 5-year-old's. "The diagnosis is noted," she said. "The treatment is, do better." "I will do better," he said. "Start now," she said. "Carry your daughter inside. She weighs more than she looks and my arms are tired." He took Sana from her. His daughter settled against his chest with the specific surrender of a child who had spent a night in a storm and walked 3 miles in the dark, and who was, finally, in the exact configuration of people she required, her father holding her and Camilla beside them, and the distance that had been wrong now closed. Chapter 8. They stayed in the settlement for 3 days while the secondary storm ran its course. 3 days in the small guest quarters of a settlement that had not been designed for a king's visit, and that managed the visit with the specific practical hospitality of people who lived at the edge of a territory and who found the king's presence less intimidating than the weather. Sana recovered quickly. Children recovered quickly. This was the specific mercy of young bodies, that they processed physical hardship with an efficiency that adult bodies could not match. By the 2nd day she was eating with her usual appetite and arguing with Camilla about the appropriate configuration of the wooden blocks that someone in the settlement had provided. By the 3rd day she was telling everyone in the settlement, with the narrative confidence of a 5-year-old who had lived through something and intended the living through to be recognized, the story of her walk into the storm. "I took the key from the guard station," she said, to a settlement woman who was listening with the wide-eyed attention of someone hearing a 5-year-old describe a felony. "He was reading. I waited until he turned the page." "She waited for the page turn," Finn said, to Camilla, in the specific tone of a man who was simultaneously horrified and impressed. "She is your daughter," Camilla said. "She reads situations. She is 5. She is a very situationally literate 5. They talked. In the 3 days. Not the evening's-only conversations of the stronghold. The sustained, uninterrupted storm enforced talking of 2 people who had been separated by a decision that one of them had made unilaterally and who needed, in the aftermath, to rebuild the structure that the unilateral decision had damaged. He told her everything. The intelligence. Rivka's assessment, the specific calculation he had run, the one that had produced, sent her away as the optimal outcome because the calculation had weighted her physical safety above everything else and had not accounted for the cost of the sending to the system that depended on her presence. She listened. She pointed at the things that were wrong. She did this with the specific direct precision that was her defining quality and that he received the way he always received it. With the recognition that the pointing was the most valuable thing anyone in his life provided him. The calculation was not wrong, she said. The inputs were incomplete. You weighted my safety. You did not weight Sana's stability, or the household's function, or your own capacity to govern clearly without the person who, she paused. Without the person you talk to in the evenings. The person who makes my face soft, he said. She pressed her lips together. Sana's word, he said. Sana's word is accurate, she said. The face is relevant data. The softness indicates a state of emotional regulation that your governance benefits from. Removing the source of the regulation is a discrepancy in the accounts, he said. She looked at him. He looked at her. Between them, the specific understanding of two people who spoke the same language, the language of systems and accuracy, and the specific direct confidence that came from trusting the evidence more than the politics. Don't send me away again, she said. I will not. If the threat returns, then I will tell you, he said. And we will decide together. And the decision will include your assessment and your autonomy and the specific fact that you are a person who is capable of evaluating risk, and who is not served by having the evaluation done for her. Good, she said. I love you, he said. I know, she said. Sana told me 4 months ago. He stared at her. Sana told you. She said you were softer when you came back from me, Camilla said. She said this meant you loved me. She presented this analysis at breakfast. I did not disagree with her methodology. Her methodology, he said. Face reading, Camilla said. It's her primary data source. She's very reliable. He looked at the window, at the storm that was winding down, at the specific landscape that his 5-year-old had walked through in the dark because she had decided that the thing that was wrong needed fixing, and she was the person available to fix it. She is terrifying, he said. She is extraordinary, Camilla said. And she gets it from both of us. Epilogue. They returned to the stronghold on the 4th day, when the road opened and the sky cleared and the territory emerged from the storm the way it always emerged, changed. The landscape reshaped by the weather's work, different in the specific ways that storms made things different. They returned together, not in a carriage, on horseback. Sana in front of Finn on his horse, Camilla beside them on hers, the escort of 4 flanking. They came through the north gate that Sana had unlocked 4 nights ago, and the stronghold received them with the specific collective exhalation of an institution that had been holding its breath. Helga was at the gate. Okonkwo was at the gate. Rivka was at the gate, with the expression of a woman who had spent 4 days running intelligence operations in a storm, and who found the king's return a welcome development for operational rather than emotional reasons, though the emotional reasons were, Finn suspected, also present beneath the professional surface. Sana dismounted with assistance and walked through the gate with the specific stride of a person returning to a place they had left under dramatic circumstances and finding the place still here, which was the specific relief that children felt when they tested the permanence of their world and found it confirmed. She turned and looked at Camilla. You're here now, she said. I'm here now, Camilla said. Are you staying? Camilla looked at Finn. He looked back. The specific exchange between them was brief and comprehensive. The exchange of 2 people who had spent 3 days rebuilding a structure and who were standing, now, in the thing they had rebuilt. I'm staying, Camilla said. Good, Sana said, and then, with the specific 5-year-old directness that did not manage transitions between topics, I want breakfast. They went inside. The stronghold closed around them. The walls and the corridors and the specific familiar architecture of a place that had been, for 4 days, missing its center and that was now, with the center returned, doing what systems did when the critical component was restored. Recalibrating. Stabilizing. Functioning. Finn walked beside Camilla through the corridors he had walked alone for 4 days, and he thought about the decision. About the letter he had written 3 times and sent without the truth. About the specific chain of consequences that had ended with his daughter in a storm, and had begun with his inability to say the thing that needed saying. He would not make that mistake again. Not because the consequence had been terrible, though it had. Because his daughter had shown him, with the absolute unfiltered clarity of a 5-year-old who fixed things by walking toward them, that the cost of not saying the true thing was always higher than the cost of saying it. Always. She had walked 3 miles in a storm to prove this point. He intended to honor the lesson. At breakfast, Santa sat between them. She ate her food in her specific order, with her specific requirements, with the settled ease of a child who had the configuration she needed. Her father on one side, and Camilla on the other, and the distance that had been wrong now permanently, structurally, irrevocably closed. "You're softer again," she said to Finn, between bites. "Am I?" he said. "Your face is," she said. She looked at Camilla. "It's because of you." "I know," Camilla said. "Don't go away again," Santa said. "I won't," Camilla said. Santa returned to her breakfast, satisfied. The matter was settled. The system was restored. The 5-year-old who had walked into a storm because the world was wrong had fixed the world, and the world was now required to remain fixed. And she intended to monitor the situation from her position at the breakfast table, where both of the people she needed were within arm's reach, and the food was arriving on schedule, and the morning was doing what mornings were supposed to do, which was contain the people you loved in the same room at the same time. That was all. That had always been all. The simplest things were the ones worth walking through storms for.